everyone wants, the lessons everyone needs, the upgrade seat.
Oh, yes, the upgrade seat on EAMG Radio. My name is Dixon Gakwandi Gakwerere, or call me Igaima. And the beautiful lady is still with us.
Yes.
We are not just going to let him go yet. All right? So, I've been following the conversation, and it is very much interesting. You have fans all over. Not only you have people who really love you, and one of our teams actually. Yeah, that's why the camera is always on you. That means you are a very, 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 very influential person. Now, you originally, Cynthia, studied digital media and documentary filming.
Yes.
At what point did you realize you weren't simply interested in telling stories, but in creating the systems that allow stories to exist in the first place?
I think building systems, I think this is where I am now. I think systems is quite specific. But I think I will start with just cameras. I grew up in a family where we had a camcorder. And so the story with that is that my uncle had a camcorder, and at times my dad would borrow the camcorder from him. And it's the beginning of the 90s, so it was huge. And my cousins were allowed, my cousins Angelique and Celeste, they were allowed to use it. And so at times they will use it, but I was too young, but also I think very petite, short, and they wouldn't allow me, and yet I just 1 year apart with my cousin Angelique, and I really wanted to try one day. And so technology evolved, and at what point my dad bought his own camcorder, and it was very small. At the time, I think I was 7 or 8, and I thought this time is going to be mine. I'm going to capture stuff myself, and so I'm sure I have a lot of silly VHS at home. But yeah, that's how it started, and I was always using it. And I think I've grown up with people who have seen me filming and taking pictures as well quite a lot. And so every time that we had, back then you have to develop your films for your pictures. And so in my family, I was in charge of that, like sorting all of that and doing all of the albums and everything. And but if you had asked me back then if it was something I was going to pursue, I never thought so, because to me that was not a real job. I just didn't know what I was going to do. I was studying languages at the time, and so then eventually I moved to the UK, and I started with communications. And so it was as I was doing my degree that I had to do a documentary in my final year, and it was a communication degree, so it was not a film school, so I don't think there was a lot of expectations. But for me, I think I really took it to heart to actually do it, because I thought this is my last chance to do something creative before getting into the real world. And so living in the UK and being a minority there as well, I thought I'd like to do something that I'm interested about, which is black hair. So I started doing interviews like that about women in the industry, about relaxing your hair, the chemicals and the danger with that and everything. And so, but for me, I did it for me first. And I got so invested that eventually, so I got the best mark of my class. I got a prize for it. And so I was very unsure about what I was going to do after. And it was my dad, actually, who studied something completely different, econometrics in English. Don't know. He's in math, and very different path. But he was the one saying, if you're looking for a master's degree, why not doing that? Because you did well, and maybe you're going to find a master's in filmmaking or something. And I chose in documentary making, which is a bit specific. And so I think with that master's now, I got the tools to understand, to be more intentional when it comes to storytelling. So I did that, and so that's when I made the decision to do a documentary about the diaspora moving back. And my lecturers were not really interested about this idea. So at the time we were about to have the 20th commemoration, and when I said like this is an idea that I have, I see a lot of media talking about Rwanda, and so that's the perspective that I have now. For them, they were like, but since you run and you have access, like why not traveling there? I think for them the idea that they had it was for me to visit prisons maybe and see and get in touch with perpetrators and getting such stories. But then back then I was 25 or 26, not equipped to do that as well, and that has been covered by a lot of media. And also there's this story that I'm telling you that is very that's very close to my heart, because I've never grown up thinking that's even possible. I grew up with families that had left Rwanda a long time ago. For some 94, a lot of them before, and so for me that was just not. It was such a new story, and I decided to do that regardless. And so I spent 2 months. It was not enough. I got back, and I came back, and so when I came back, I realized that even if I was trying to grow mostly as a video editor or being in the documentary space, that being in this market, it was just not going to be enough for me to sustain myself. And so I had to be a bit more, I had to learn how to multitask. I had to learn to do different things. And so I was not comfortable with the camera back then, and I had to learn how to be a videographer. I was doing a little bit, but I had to learn how to do it, because otherwise I felt like I had nothing to offer. And so eventually I joined Illum Creative Studio. I had been the in-house videographer for a year. So that's 2015. The landscape was very different. Video consumption was only on YouTube, TV. There was no video content on LinkedIn or Instagram, no Instagram stories. And so what you would consider as being a highlight video today, 30 seconds, 40 seconds, back then it was, 5 minutes. But that's what I was doing. And so that's what I did for 3 to 4 years. I started getting into the wedding industry as well. So I've done a couple of wedding videos. And then with wedding videos, actually, I learned how to work with people, briefing people, and also with KCC, that was new at the time, a lot of conferences, so I got involved a lot with the MICE industry, and with all of that, eventually I joined RDB, and I joined RDB a few months before COVID, and so when COVID hit, like we had to be a lot more intentional with social media now. So now I had to really think outside the box, like how we're going to do content, and yet there's a lockdown. We want people to keep Rwanda as a destination in their mind, and yet the airport is closed. And so I think that the amount of content that was being done at RDB changed overnight with that. And there had been many campaigns. Now if you add BAL, Chogam, where I had to think of, in terms of campaigns, like, of course there are many people working for RDB Visit Rwanda, and my role was specifically being in between the camera operators and the communication division, but I had only been working in a way where I will grab the camera and go and do it myself, but now I had to report, I had to explain beforehand what was going to be done and for what reason, and I had to learn how to prioritize, and so with that you have to learn how to conceptualize. And so it was so many things at the same time. RDB has been such a school. I've been busy. I feel like the 4 years that I spent at RDB, for me, they count double. But yeah, I think it was when I was working for RDB and the Visit Rwanda campaigns that I worked at the campaign level. And you know, working on projects like having the first Kwitizina virtual ceremonies. We couldn't have just namers on screen filming themselves and giving a name to her baby gorilla. So what do we do in between? And so we had to think about storytelling. But then, what kind of stories do we want to tell? We want to tell stories about conservation, and how do we do that? Like how do we engage with rangers? How do we engage with the different national parks? And so for me, I think specifically the experience, it was a great way for me to combine what I had done in the UK, which is communication and strategies, and then documentary making. And I think since then, it's what I've been doing.
We're gonna.
That is
a
very beautiful relationship.
We are navigating
with the
we
camera.
are navigating both your personal creative career with everything that you have learned from working, like you say, from an institution like RDB, and all the knowledge that you have gathered that led you to starting your new, to funding Imigani, and later on we will come back to how this knowledge, but you have already given us a little bit of an answer to a question that was coming, which is what I love. That means that you know your thing, you know your stuff, you know your communication, you know the kind of question that you will be asked, and I'm thinking that you have your answers. But I would like us to come back a little bit and not just go there yet, because we'll go there. I would like to still remain in your photography work, your creative work, and that you actually, if I'm not wrong, you describe it as a documentary. How do you describe it? Documentary observation, right? You describe your photography as a documentary observation. I would like to know how becoming a photographer changed the way you experience life, or if it has at all, in ways that you notice details, maybe some of us will just walk past.
So I think for me, I definitely started as a videographer first, and I got absorbed by that and by the work that I had to do. And I think when you're freelancing, you always you always chasing the next gig. And so when I joined RDB, I was very busy, sure, but I thought that I think for me as a creative, it was very comfortable to think that at the end of the month, for sure, I'll get my salary. So if I do get my salary and at time I have a day off, can I explore something for myself? Especially with COVID, I think there was this huge... I would see a lot of content online, people saying it's a good time to learn something. And for me, I wanted to explore photography more, and I think this is really when I started being very intentional with that, and and what kind of imagery I would like to capture that I wish I had grown up with. And so it started with Inyambo cows, and then traditional dances, and I wanted to have photography in my living room, which I still have today, and I still have pictures from back then in 2020. And that's how I started. Okay, I have Inyambo cows now. Let me do dances. Let me have Inhore dances. Let me have women dancing in Mushagirido, things like that. And then do I know an Inanga player? It would be nice to capture artisans, women doing basket weaving, agaseke. And so I kind of have a checklist, and so I think it was just the basic things that you will think about when it comes to Rwandan culture, and then how can I capture it in a way that I would like, that I enjoy. And I think eventually, I started thinking I need to understand the genre that I'm after, and to me that was documentary photography, because you have within documentary photography, it's candid. I'm not after posed pictures. and I think with that, the moment that people know that is what you do get a lot of freedom, in the sense that if you do photography for an event, there are specific shots that you need to have. If you have an event like any conference really, there's certain things that you need to have, people shaking hands, a delegation, things like that. And so the moment it's gone quickly. But I feel with that, I could just go to a place, I can be there for 3 hours, and maybe I'll have the same picture 200 times, and just one that I really like and I capture the right moment. And I really like that, and I think it probably happened when I was at RDB, because I was working for an institution where things had to look a certain way, and there's a reason as to why it has to look a certain way. But I felt for me, as a creative, I needed something to, feed my soul.
And 8 years later, after you came to Rwanda, your first exhibition.
Yes.
Why did it take that amount of time? Was it the right time finally to share your work?
I think so, because as I was saying, like getting into photography, it was only it took me a couple of years to get there, and I think it's also because it took me time to look back and think, like, from a creative perspective, like, how do I want to tell those stories? I think before it was very straightforward. There's a story, I do an interview. But now, how can I take the same idea, but it's a feeling that I would like to show? And I think what I was saying about doing documentary photography, it was to actually get that. And I think for me, what I told myself is that I'm going to take as many pictures as I can. And I think this is still how I take pictures now. And I'm going to take pictures, the same one, until I get goosebumps. You know, so that's very subjective. That's very subjective to me. I think what I find beautiful, it might not be what someone next to me finds beautiful. But I think that's the approach that I've been having. Like, how can I take pictures until I have goosebumps? And so that's how it happened. And so by sharing the work online, that's how I've been. People started engaging with what I do. And one of my friends, Nelson Yakire, like just saying the work on social media, then he, as a curator, he offered for me to be part of an exhibition. And so I did that. After that I've been part of 3 other group exhibitions. So I never done a solo exhibition one day. And I think the moment I started being involved with that, which is being exhibited, it changed my perspective with photography. Like it can actually be an art form, and it's a great conversation starter. And you know, the way people come to exhibitions and they engage with your work and they engage with you as an artist is very different from getting emojis on social media, on Instagram. And I really enjoyed that. And I think it gave a lot of substance to what I'm after. To the point I thought, like, I really want to move away from doing commercial photography. And you want to do more? Yes, and so I still, for me to pay my bills, I know I have to do communication work. And today I try to really position myself as a strategist for that. But I don't want to be, when it comes to social media management, I don't want to be involved with the camera work. I don't want to be the videographer or the photographer. And it took me time to actually get there and to have that boundary. But for me, like, it's important for me to protect the kind of aesthetics that I have developed over the years.
I see. And you know what? There was this speech from Steve Jobs about connecting the dots. And it has been such an interesting speech for me about how in life, you know, things go, and somehow you know what you're doing. Sometimes you even have a vision, but you don't realize how in the end things connect. You know, everything that you have been doing connects to become something. And what I'm gathering from this experience, that you know, you had this photography that freezes the moment, and you've been talking about how basically your subject for photography has been culture, has been from Inyambo to the dancers to the Inanga players, etc., etc. And somehow I draw that path, and I find myself wondering, is that how Imigani was born? Because this is something else that you built, and that goes beyond freezing the moment with photography. You're, in my opinion, freezing an entire movement of something that is happening. Can you tell us a little bit about founding Imigani and what Imigani is all about?
So I founded Imigani 3 years ago, and I registered it 2 years ago. And so I think initially I was looking for an outlet where I could pour all of this work. I started, with that photography and capturing culture, and then eventually I started capturing creatives, and I started a podcast as well. And when I did that, the podcast had my name, Le Podcast de Cynthia Butare, and after 6 episodes, I was like, it just sounds so wrong, because I'm talking to people, it's becoming this platform, it has the ability to grow a community, and then now this is all about myself if I'm giving it my own name. And so I thought, like, I have to change. The podcast has to have a new name. But then when I changed the name, I haven't been able to pick up the podcast, because I was working on the website, developing the visual brand identity. And so I worked with a friend of mine who's a graphic designer, and she works with a lot of brands. And so I wanted to have something that is really random, so I use a lot of Imigongo patterns, but then very contemporary, very edgy, so it has a lot of colors. And so she did that so well, and 3 years later I'm still I love the brand so much. And then I had to think, like, what is that platform going to be? And so I wanted it to be a media where I'm shedding light on creatives, especially the ones that I hear, and it's very contemporary or timeless, but then also they get inspired by Rwandan culture. And so I love that fusion when you see that being done well. And so that's how it started. And so for me to gather those stories, I still had to either photograph them or doing video content. And so it became a whole library. And I think it was also I think for me was also a way of talking about events that we are doing, because as I said, I've been involved with exhibitions, and so I could see that we could have so much more engagement if there was a communication strategy behind, because now I could bring all of the things I have learned with working at RDB and working at the campaign level, like all the things that you have to think about. And so I was trying to have a place where I could have all of that, like I could use all of my skills all together. And so with time, things get a bit more precise. And so what Imigani is meant to do now is to grow a cultural calendar, a directory of artists. It's about capacity building as well. How can you be your own manager as an artist, and making sure that your communication is done well.
Yes.
And so I think with that, it gives substantial support to the growth of the creative industry.
So people often imagine, it's true, creativity as simply about talent, but you speak a lot about systems, budgets, planning, and strategy. So do you think that creatives now have to become better entrepreneurs if they want to have sustainable careers? Or is that where you come in?
I would like Imigani to support with all of that. But then for now, it's still a one-woman band. I would like to get funds to grow the project and to have people involved with that. And I think by getting more precise about what Imigani is, eventually is going to happen. But I think that when you create, you have to be in your zone. And you should have support. But in the meantime, you need to learn how to do that for yourself. You need to be able like to talk about what is it that you do. You need to be able like to send your bios, the description of each of the work that you're doing, all of these things that you're being asked as an artist. And I think at times you see artists missing opportunities because of that missing piece. And so I've been doing workshops last year to give that foundation, and because sure, even if you want to work, eventually you want to work with a manager, because some of the artists here they do have that. Before that, you need to get noticed by someone, and to get noticed, you need to do that effectively. So at the very basic level, what is it that you can learn how to do?
Well. We have 1 minute until we break, but we'll come back for the rapid question. But before we go, I want you to think about a question that you're going to answer to me. Yeah, if Rwanda wants to become one of Africa's leading creative hubs, what do you believe should happen next? What piece of this puzzle is still missing? Think about it. You'll answer when we come back.